Thank you. Good evening to you all. I want to warmly welcome you to my PhD defense. Before I continue, let me introduce my paranames. At my left-hand side is Debbie, and Simone at my right-hand side. Have your seat. Again, I want to welcome my families and friends who are here physically with me to share this moment with me, and also my family back at home who are online. Thank you for your support. So in the next 10 minutes, I will give you a layman talk on what I've been doing for the past 4 years. For the past 4 years, I've been traversing the length and breadth of Oyo State, virtually and physically. And in the course of this journey, I met two brothers who inherited a parcel of land. Within 6 months, that land that they inherited became a battlefield. Crops were born, martyrs were raised, and one life was lost, all because no one could agree who truly owned the land. I know you want to ask a question. Somebody may just be thinking, okay, how can land, the very foundation of livelihood and development, become a weapon of conflict? The answer is not far-fetched. Land is beyond the physical sphere. Land is an identity. An attempt to take people's identity from them always result in conflict. Land is seen as a generational asset. People believe that their land does not belong to them alone. It belongs to their ancestors and the unborn generation. So that is why people do everything to make sure they protect their right on land. Also, they see land as their own dignity. And any attempt to make them lose their dignity always results into conflict. Also, as we know, our land, our survival. That is the perception of people about their land. So when we now talk about land conflict means when there is a different goals about different goals on something, or when there's a different interest over a property, that is landed property. So different interests on land always result into land conflict. And research has found out that in Oyo State, 60% of conflict and 50% of court cases in Oyo State are land related. This shows the significance of land in Oyo State. And the implication is that land can mar or make relationship. You see, because of land conflict, some community have become enemy to each other. And if we are to reduce land conflict in our society, and if land is to perform its role as an agent of development, economic growth, there's need for effective land conflict management framework. The overall objective of this study, we examine the nature and management of land conflict in Oyo State with a view to design an inclusive framework for land conflict management. And this, for Oyo State, is one of the 36 states in Nigeria, and predominantly occupied by Yoruba tribe. And Oyo State has 7 zones, Ibadan 1 and 2, and Okeogun 1 and 2. Also, Ogbomoso, Ibarapa, and Oyo. But out of these 7 zones, because of the time frame This study was carried out only in 7 zones. And data were obtained through key informant interview and focus group discussion. And at the end of the day, this data, before the framework were validated by the land conflict stakeholders. And the stakeholders that were interviewed were traditional ruler, family head, community leaders, the Seriki Fulani, that is herders, and community women leaders, just to accommodate the women's opinion and view. For Objective 1, we examined the profile of land conflict stakeholders in Oyo State. And we found out that the major form of land conflict in Oyo State are ownership land conflict, that is, people conflict the different interests on land as a result of the ownership. Also, inheritance, by virtue of the tradition and custom of Yoruba, which people inherit land, but there used to be inheritance land conflict. Also, boundary conflict as a result of improper demarcation of land. Also, some people engage in land grabbing activities. So those are the form of land conflict. And also, we found out that the stakeholders in land conflict are divided into two types. That is, conflict resolver and the conflicting parties. And this group were divided into, were classified into non-governmental and governmental. And this stakeholder also performed the role of advocacy group. This suggests that there is a weak land governance and land administration system in Oyo State because of this form of land conflict. And if you see from the stakeholder, you see that it involves government, individual, NGO, all of them participated in land conflict. For Objective 2, we identified the impact of land conflict. Beyond the loss of life and property that is known to everybody that, whenever there's land conflict, it always results into loss of life. We discovered that land conflict also results into soil relationship in which some families are not in talking terms again, they are not greeting each other again, some communities are not in good terms again. And we classified this impact into 3 major impact, that is social, economic, cultural, and market and governance impact. And these impacts are evident on individual and community, families, and in the nation economic. And that is why some areas are not developed as a result of this land conflict. And if an inclusive framework needed to be designed, that is, attention has to be paid to all those impacts that are not so, you can see with our physical eyes. So, and insight from this can be used to design a framework for land conflict management. For sub-objective 3, you investigate the land conflict management mechanisms that are being adopted in Oyo State. Firstly, we identify the drivers of land conflict. We discover that greed and selfishness, land grabbing, undefined relationship when allocating land, and also the claim of some traditional rulers as the owner of the land in their territory are the major drivers of land conflict. For example, some traditional rulers still believe that, since they are the traditional ruler of this community, all the lands belong to them, forgetting that the Land Use Act of 1978 abrogated their power. So, the findings from sub-objective 3 suggest that the flaws in these drivers of land conflicts and the flaws in the mechanism are what make land conflict to thrive in Oyo State. And concerning the mechanism, we find out that people in Oyo State are using litigation, mediation, and force and self-help to manage land conflict. But among these three, all of them agree that mediation is the best mechanism to manage land conflict. And if we are to use mediation, that means proper attention has to be paid to the flaws that make mediation not to manage land conflict effectively. For example, if the two brothers use mediation, if they were able to sit down together, one of them wouldn't have died because of land. For sub-objective 4, we design an inclusive framework for land conflict. So the insights from the sub-objective 1, sub-objective 2, and 3 were used to design an inclusive framework to manage land conflict. And if we are to have an effective and inclusive land conflict management framework, that means there must be one land law and land policy. Because, for example, in Oyo State now, in Nigeria, we have a Land Use Act, which is the highest law in the land that is governing the use and management of land. And despite that law, which was enacted to nationalize all the land, management land use in Nigeria, people are still using the customary laws, tradition to administer their land. So there must be one law. Government should allow there must be stakeholders' participation in the enactment and implementation of law. Also, there must be a good land administration system on ground. Also, there must be a conflict resolution mechanism. And this will give us effective and inclusive land conflict management. So, and if you have a conflict resolution mechanism, there must be a practice, what they need to follow to achieve this. So for this, we propose that at every level, there must be a management, a committee to manage land conflict at every level, family level, community level, local government level, and state level. So, and litigation should be the last option. Well, some people, at times, they litigate first. And you see, the custom, the tradition of Yoruba people, they always say that you don't go to court and come back as friend. So they need to at least make sure they use mediation first. After mediation must have failed, that is when they can now litigate, employ litigation. So this framework was assessed after we designed this framework to know whether it is going to be applicable. We call the stakeholders, those in academics, the traditional ruler, to assess it. So, and their assessment make this land conflict inclusive. Conclusion and recommendation. Mediation is the best mechanism to manage land conflict, as I've said. Litigation should be the last resort so that it will go in line with the tradition of people in Oyo State. And also, government should make sure that all stakeholders are involved in the enactment and implementation of law. So the framework alone cannot manage land conflict effectively. But all the stakeholders, including government, involved in the management of land conflicts, need to act transparently and fairly and apply all good land governance principles in manage land conflict. So, anytime you see land, as I've said, land go beyond this. Thank you very much for listening.
I open this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente. I'd like to express my warm welcome to all of you, in particular to the family and friends of the candidate. Of course, also a special welcome is extended to the members of the committee who would like to introduce to you. Online is Professor Chikbu of the Namibia University of Science and Technology. Welcome. Online as well is Dr. Ploeger from the Delft University of Technology and Dr. Weerman of the Technical University of Berlin. Also very welcome. Then present in the room here are the opponents, Professor Loaza and Professor Koever from the University of Twente. And next to me seated is the promoter, Professor Zevenbergen, and online is the co-promoter, Dr. Todorovsky. All very much welcome. Could the candidate and his parents come forward, please? Your candidate, are you ready for your defense?
Yes, I'm ready.
Very good. May I ask Professor Chikbu to open the opposition, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Good afternoon from Namibia. It's good to meet everyone here and the candidate. I'd like to start by asking the candidate, or rather discuss the problematization of his work. In his problem statement, or the gap statement, he did make a comment that says, while describing the land conflict frameworks that already exist, he noted, and in quotes, he said, however, none have managed land conflict effectively due to the lack of inclusivity, non-consideration of the tradition, culture, beliefs, and the nature of land conflict in the locality. Now, my question is, I would think that if you are to produce an inclusive framework, you must also approach the matter with an inclusive approach or from an inclusive perspective. So why then the focus on the framework as the problem without a similar focus on how these frameworks have been used and the people that have used them before?
Thank you for your comment, highly learned opponent. And if I get your question correctly, you say why in my problem statement I said that lack of inclusivity, that is what make the previous framework less effective. And why did I not make my own inclusive? Is that the question?
Okay, I would explain. You're close to the question, but my actual question is, if you're speaking about producing a framework that is inclusive, why is your problem statement blaming previous frameworks? Frameworks do not operationalize themselves. A framework could be good, but the people who operationalize it cannot use it to produce results. A framework could be good, but the system in which the framework is operationalized may not allow it to produce results. But your problem statement focuses on indicating that frameworks have not worked without correspondingly dealing with how they've been used as a problem, or the people that have used it as part of the problem. Is it clear?
Okay. Thank you, highly learned opponent, for that question. Yes, the previous frameworks, the reason why we stated that we blame the previous framework is because of its less effectiveness. And just to create a background for the new framework, because we discovered that the previous framework has not been able to manage land conflict effectively. And once we discover that previous one have not managed land conflict effectively, there's need for a new one. And that is why we make the one we design an inclusive one.
Okay, I have some other points to discuss.
Okay.
So thanks for that. In your figure 5.3, which deals on the current practice in Nigeria.
5.3.
The aspects of litigation, I'm speaking about your thesis, page 147. In the aspects of litigation, you identified the High Court, the Appeal Court, and the Supreme Court are channels for dealing or mediating unsuccessful cases. But my question rather is looking at the fact that the customary courts in Nigeria fall at the lowest hierarchy of courts that deal with land inheritance and marriage issues related to land as well. So, from a bottom-up customary court approach in Nigeria, if you have to look at it that way, you would think that your litigation, option for litigation should have embraced the customary courts. I mean, the customary courts they are recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In fact, in the Constitution of Nigeria, 1999, the word customary court is identified 6 times with its roles, either explicitly outlined or implied. So, does that mean, in fact, in Oyo, I am very sure that presently in Oyo State, we have customary courts of different grades, the grade A and the grade C. And also in Oyo State, we have the customary court of appeal. So I was wondering why, in presenting the state of land conflict framework in Nigeria, why you identify for litigation high courts, appeal courts, and Supreme Courts without identifying the courts, the customary courts.
Thank you for that interesting question, highly learned opponents. Yes, you are correct. There's a customary land court in Nigeria and in justice. But the assumption is that you have seen that I perceive that customary is just under the High Court. We just give these 3 to show the level of the court that they can approach whenever they want to litigate after maybe it has failed at customary. So can go to High Court, Appeal Court, and Supreme Court. Not that at least I know that you are correct in the Constitution of the Nigeria, customary court is recognized.
Okay, thanks very much. But I also would like to point out that what you've just said now is not represented in the diagram. The diagram begins with land conflict in Oyo State. It has 2 arms, the statutory institution and the customary institution. I'm assuming that your response is based on the fact that the customary institution deals with these issues. However, when you get to the litigation, the court, the judicial system, or the judicial court in Nigeria has a hierarchy. I would have expected you to be inclusive enough, considering that we're talking about an inclusive framework, that you should have identified those hierarchies. But thanks for actually acknowledging that. I have one more question. And this is now, my previous question was on the state of affairs in terms of framework in Nigeria. Now we move to the actual output of your thesis, which is the inclusive framework. So,
Professor Shikwu, please phrase your question quite short, and please also give a short answer.
My question then is, apart from the expected outcome of applying your suggested framework, can you speak a little bit on what your framework has that other frameworks or existing frameworks do not have in Nigeria?
Yes. Thank you, highly learned opponent. what makes this framework inclusive is that the framework was not based on postulation unlike other ones, but this is based on the empirical study carried out, and it was validated by the by the stakeholders in the land industry. So that is what makes this framework inclusive.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. I yield the time.
Thank you very much, Professor Jigbo. Are you satisfied with the answers?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Then could I please invite Dr. Ploeger to continue the opposition?
Thank you, dear Rector. Dear candidate, I've read your thesis with a lot of interest. It's because it's not only based on theory, but also you go deep into the practice and you propose solutions to counter all that violence that's occurring in the actual practice. But however, talking about your literature review, I observed that one name is not mentioned in your book, and maybe that's a good thing. You know Hernando de Soto with his Mystery of Capital?
No?
No, okay. That's because when I started in this field of land administration 25 years ago, that was a name that was actually very big. He's not from Africa, he's from South America. In the Mystery of Capital, he proposes land titling, so the formalization of rights in land, as a key to unlock not only capital but also reduce conflicts. So the whole idea is, at the moment we register interest in the rights in land, then both economy and also the safety and security in land will improve. He shaped much of the debate of land governance in the beginning of the 21st century, as I said. However, your work, and again, it is not an omission, but it's very interesting that you seem to confirm in your thesis a lot of criticism that was mentioned in the literature and also from other African authors on the Soto. However, on page 2, you also seem on the other hand to confirm the Soto thesis by starting with mentioning that in many Western countries the menace of land conflict has reduced because of land registration. Now, my question is this, in your findings in Oyo State, and as in particular in the Ibadan zone, if I pronounced correctly, the urbanized zone, what you observe there is that despite cadastral surveying, so we are registering, we are formalizing the rights, and also the introduction of land law, conflicts are actually increasing. Land grabbing and multiple sales you mentioned. And it's all driven by urbanization and rising land value. So against this background, would it be justified to make the very radical conclusion that Western technology-driven and titling-based land administration solutions, like proposed by De Soto, are outside Europe not only fall short, but in fact contribute to the emergence of new conflicts? What's your opinion?
Thank you, my ally, my learned opponent, for that interesting question. I think the question was the explanation was so long and the question. So, but if I get the question correctly, are you asking whether land registration guaranteed maybe ownership or maybe if a land is registered, there won't be land conflict. Is that what you are asking?
Indeed, because your research seems to suggest that. So in
Yes.
fact, yeah.
Yes. Thank you. From the findings and from my study, also I discovered that land registration, even does not guarantee that there won't be land conflict, because the land grabbing activities is on rampant now. People want to survive, so people are just taking the land of people, the land they don't have right on. So people don't even consider it a belief that, oh, even if I take this person's land, at least when we get to court, and the court can take several years. So some lands, parcels of land were registered. Still, even government land are experiencing the land conflict. So the answer is land registration does not guarantee that there won't be land conflict.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. Then I would like to take this a bit further and then also making connection with your proposed framework. I'm referring to you cite a government official that's in section 3423 that's dealing with the question of certificates of occupancy. What there the official says that there is a problem because we cannot issue those certificates because there are conflicts on the property. I can fully understand this, but on the other hand, could you argue that this is a chicken and egg dilemma? Because when we have conflicts, we cannot issue certificates. But on the other hand, you could also argue that because there are no certificates issued, there are conflicts. Now, it's my question, how does your proposed conflict resolution framework addresses this problem, a circular problem, where to start? And what evidence can you provide that your framework is capable of ending this dilemma and offering a workable solution in cases such as these?
Thank you, my learned opponent, for that interesting question. In the first segment of the framework, I have integration of tenure system. Once there's integration of customary tenure system and statutory tenure system, there won't be law that are conflicting. Presently now, we have several laws that are conflicting with each other. So once there's one law, one law will solve that problem. So there won't be issue with the conflicting laws again.
Okay, thanks, but that raises another question because I get the impression that the problems in your area of research are such big that I wonder, and also referring to your theoretical framework where you use the social conflict theory, that I wonder if the conflicts that occur are should we not focus this and research this seen from a cultural and political perspective rather than land administration? So in other words, my conclusion after reading your thesis is that actually land administration, and I refer also to the UN definition that's about information, so gathering information, storing information, and providing information to the people, that actually that's not really the solution, and that the problems are far more deeper.
Dear candidate, could you please give a very brief answer?
Okay. Thank you, Alan and opponent. I think once there's a good land administration system on ground, because presently there's a weak the land administration and the land governance system of the in your state is weak, and that is why there are a lot of various forms of land conflict that have been experienced in Oyo State.
Okay, thank you, dear candidate. Dr. Ploeger, are you satisfied with the answers?
I'm satisfied.
Thank you. Then I'd like to invite Dr. Weerman to ask her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear candidate, let me start by confirming that you have chosen a very highly relevant topic all over Africa, particularly in Nigeria, but also a very challenging topic. So I was very interested in reading your thesis and to develop how you actually propose your framework. And as I'm a researcher but also a practitioner, I'm very much interested in how this framework could be put in practice. Now you propose quite a number of levels, like starting from the family level, and then if the conflict is not solved, then going to the next higher level. And for each level you propose, if I got it right, one group of people who investigate on the conflict, and then other people who actually do the mediation. So my questions are as follows. Could you elaborate a bit more on the composition of the people at the different levels who are supposed to do the mediation, the investigation and the mediation? Then second question, how all these people all over Nigeria could be trained, like how can you reach out to them? How can they be able to actually do the mediation? And third question, how do you make sure, or how do you think it's possible that these people will also be able to the existing power asymmetries? And we know very well that particularly in land conflicts, we very often have very, very strong power asymmetries. So my three questions: how are the different bodies composed? Who is part of it? How will these people be trained? And how will they be able to deal with power asymmetries?
Thank you, my learned opponent, and thank you for your compliment on my research and for that interesting question. Depending on the level of the management, for example, if it is on family level, the committee will comprise of the family head and the member of the principal members of the family. So these are the people who know the history of the family, and they will be able to tell the conflicting parties the truth, the history of the land. So through that, they will be able to mediate between the parties. And if it is at community level, it's going to comprise of the community leaders, the traditional rulers. So that's why I said it depends on the level of that, the level. And if it's at a state level, that will be the duty of the governor of the state to know who are those people who are knowledgeable about land management in that state. So those are the people that the governor will include in the committee.
Could I directly ask another question? So did I get you right that at the community level, you rather see the traditional leaders and local community members, and then only at the state level you see state representatives?
Yes.
How do we solve the problem that most of the conflicts are somehow related to the fact that traditional leaders consider the land as theirs as well as the states. I mean, according to law, all state is vested in the governance of the state. De facto, it's the leaders who allocate the land rights, and that's the base of most of the conflicts. So how do you solve a conflict if either only the traditional authorities or only the state authorities are present at one of these levels?
Yes, if it's at a community level, as I've said earlier, that we have some community leaders, even who are older than the traditional ruler, who will look at traditional ruler on the face and tell him the truth that, oh, this land, each family in the community has a land. Even the land of the community does not belong to the traditional ruler. You just hold the land in trust for the people of that community. And if the traditional fail to listen to them, so the other party can approach the next level, which is a local government level. And at that level, the local government chairman will be able to appoint those people that will be able to look at the traditional and tell him the truth. So that's why I said that the conflict management has a different level, so that to prevent injustice and to encourage fairness at every level. So if one of the party thinks that, oh, it's not satisfied with decision at a particular level, it can approach the next level.
You are proposing mediation as the best way of conflict resolution, and this is definitely what I can confirm with quite a number of countries, that at local level mediation works best. Now, you are not only proposing one inclusive committee to solve the conflict, but you're actually proposing quite a number of committees at different levels. So my second question remains, how do you train these people in mediation? I think when I did my certificate to become a mediator, I spent quite a number of weekends and additional evenings in training. So how are these people supposed to do the mediation?
Thank you for that interesting question, my learned opponent. I think maybe that will be another for further study. At least this research did not consider that aspect, that in terms of training, but I think in each level, by the time they want to appoint the committee, they must have appointed those people who have knowledge about history, about that community, or those people who are of age that can say the truth. Because in the factors considered, we consider some factor before we adopt a mediation as the best mechanism. That is, the parties involved must be fair to the parties, or the conflicting parties. So there's not the profession for maybe formal training, but I think in each community we have each community has some elders who, no matter in the face of any condition, they always say the truth. So I think by the time as years goes on, at least they will know what to do. But this study did not recommend any training for this member. We believe that at each level they should be able to know who to appoint into this committee.
And let me ask my final question. How do you spread the information all over Nigeria that these different bodies at the different levels are supposed to be put in place? And how do you raise the awareness among citizens that this is the way how conflicts are supposed to be solved in the future? Also given the fact that many parts of Nigeria currently are not so easily accessible.
Thank you for that interesting question, my lord and opponent. I think Nigeria is a big country, but I will rather start within your state. My plan is that to the end of this, when I get back to my country, I'll be able to have like a executive summary of what I've done and present it to the state governor for your state. I think through that, they'll be able to see, at least, they'll be able to know that there's a framework, through this framework, they can manage land conflict. I think through that, awareness has been created.
Thank you, dear candidates. Dr. Weerman, are you satisfied with the answers?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Then I'd like to invite Professor Koever to continue with the opposition.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for taking us in a very interesting and very complex and truly impactful research in terms of the impact for lives and security in Nigeria. I think in the center of the conflict, and you're coming back throughout the chapters, is the conflict between the farmers and the herders, with like the sort of the groups moving with their animals and have typically use rights to the land. So in the proposed land administration system, it's often this use rights of the herders is of course often excluded, and this contributes to the conflict. How do you see that your framework is addressing or solving or helping to mitigate this conflict? Because this conflict is often ending in massive violences. I've been myself in Nigeria reading that whole villages are getting killed in this conflict.
Thank you, early land opponent, for that question, and thank you for the compliment on my research. I think farmer herders is one of the form of land conflict in Oyo State, even in Nigeria generally. And once there's a good land administration system on ground, I think it will solve this problem of farmers herder, because it is about conflict of land use, because farmers want their animal to graze the farmers.
But if I may interrupt you, is not the situation to give titles to the farmers, basically excluding the herders from their use rights, and does it not even contribute to the conflict, to be very provocative?
Sorry, if I get your question, Lana?
So my question is the land, sort of giving land titles, or let's say doing the formal land administration, and to have the land rights for the farmers, is this not excluding the herders, which will be actually contribute to increase the conflict?
Yes, that is why I said if there's a good land administration system, it will spell out what each party needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
So at least there will be a route for the others, for their animals to graze, so that they will not even encroach the farmers' farm. That's why I say once there's a good administration that states, law that states the rules, and the parties abide by it, I think it will be okay.
Okay, good. Which leads me to my next question, which goes back to the table 4.2 on page 111, which gives an overview of the drivers of land conflicts. And I was wondering, reading through this table, and also, so this table is coming from your key informants on the sort of looking to the contribution importance of the drivers. And I was surprised to see at the last rank climate change, which on a way is in a way obvious if you ask your key informants about the drivers, because that's not a very tangible driver. But I think it's a very underlying driver of all the conflicts that you have, like growing urbanization, population growth, and climate change, which is reducing sort of the grazing areas, particularly of the herders, that this contributes to land conflicts as a more an underlying factor. And then I was asking myself whether these drivers you list there, whether they are not of different dimensions or hierarchies, and putting them together, whether this was a wise decision or because, like, say, very important factor seems to be of very low importance.
Thank you, Halil and the opponent, for that interesting question. The same way you were surprised, I was surprised when I analyzed the data, because after I've carried out the interview and focus group discussion, I extracted all the drivers and send it back to the stakeholders to rank it. And that was the result. So I think, maybe based on their own perception, that is why they just, I expected it to, because climate change is what contributed to farmers' herders conflict. Because during the rainy season, during the dry season, they come. So that is because they want their animal to feed their animal. So it contributes to, it's one of the factors, major factor of farmers' herders conflict.
But it's not that visible for people on the ground. So it's something which, like, for example, the first factor, land grabbing, that's something which is very clear for people. This is happening. Climate change is something more complex. So that's the reason why I was wondering whether you put factors of different complexity hierarchies in this table, which maybe could have been done differently.
No, I just I listed from the interview and focus group discussion and secondary data. I extracted it and put it in form of a questionnaire and send it back to them. So just to know, to rank it, and that is not I did not put it in maybe this one, but generally to rank it generally in the term of which one the most important one, and that is their own perspective about that.
Thank you. Do you have time for a very short question or?
Very short.
Okay. What on page 83, where you have the where you do the component, the principal component analysis, the PCA.
83.
83, table 3.2, for example. What do you learn from the PCA? Because you're a bit short in what you actually conclude from the PCA. So what is how does PCA analysis add to, for example, to your framework development?
Yes, the PCA, thank you for that interesting question, Ali, Lana, and the opponent. The PCA help to just know we have many impact. So with the PCA, I was able to identify the number of groups to just group it instead of just to classify. It helps in classification of the impact of land conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, I think my time is out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kuva. Professor Loaza, may I invite you to share your questions, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Dear candidate, thank you so much for your thesis, which I read with so much interest, given the importance and of the topic, which is very relevant, as other opponents have mentioned, and on the African continent, where there is still a lot of people depending on land, and therefore land being their bloodline and basis for livelihood. Taking us through the understanding of conflicts in Oyo State, and then moving in the direction of proposing a framework as a solution. And I would like to ask you a few questions about that framework. You do propose a framework in the figure that has already been talked about earlier, where you have steps indicated, and you have two levels, the one that you conceptualize yourself, and then the steps that is detailed. And that one of the things you want to integrate for inclusiveness, which is part of your departure point on good land administration, if it exists, then you have less conflict. And therefore, tenure, customary tenure being integrated alongside the formal tenure, then makes me assume, and your framework does assume, that then that will deliver conflict management in Oyo State. I want to specifically ask you how efficient this proposed framework would be, given the fact that there's always tension between customary land mediation processes and the formal processes.
Thank you for your compliment and that interesting question. Highly learned opponent. I think towards the end of that framework, I said that this framework alone cannot solve the problem of land conflict. All stakeholders involved in the management of land conflicts needs to apply all the steps stated and all the principles of good land governance stated. So with that, you'll be able to achieve good land conflict management. But for framework alone, without the stakeholder involved applying all the steps and principle of good land governance, won't be able to achieve that.
Thank you. As a follow-up, since you plan to go back to Oyo State and talk to the state officials about that, how would you make the pitch for this framework together with those others that you're talking about that would deliver efficient and effective land conflict management? What would you tell the state officials?
Yes, my plan, thank you for that interesting question, highly learned opponent. I don't think I will have any issue to be able to get to them, because during the course of my field work, I had the opportunity to interview the Surveyor General of Oyo State, directors of Ministry of Lands. So through them, I should be even the opportunity to see the current deputy governor too. So who is the chairman of boundary committee in Oyo State. So through those people, I should be able to reach the governor and make my own presentation to them and tell them, with this, if all hands are on deck and they apply this framework, they should be able to manage land conflict effectively in Oyo State.
Thank you, candidate. You also refer to the herders and the farmers. And earlier on in one of the responses, you alluded to what I think of as land use planning. What do you see as the role of land use planning alongside this proposed framework for a good land administration to resolve the conflicts between herders and other users?
Thank you, Ali Laland opponent. I think for a good land administration system, there must be land use planning. So if there's a good land administration on ground, so there will be provision for land use planning in which the others will know where the route to pass, so that they won't encroach on farmers' farm. So I think it will do good land administration system will help in that aspect.
Would that route be titleized formally, or would it remain in customary holdership or ownership?
It depends. If please, Eileen and opponent, if I understand your question, can you?
So if the herders have a right, which is use right as mentioned earlier,
Yes.
and they can use a route and herd through that route, but then the formal system requires titles.
Yes.
Would it be titleized or customary?
Thank you, Mr. Wiedel. Can I ask the candidate and his parents to take their seats, please? I adjourn this public meeting of the Doctors' Board of the University of Twente. I reopen this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente. May I invite the candidate and his paronyms to take their stand before this table, please. The Doctorate Board of the University of Twente, represented by us, has examined your dissertation and heard your defense. The Committee of Deans has decided, in accordance with Article 7.18 of the Law on Higher Education and Scientific Research, to admit you to the degree of doctor. I request the promoter to carry out the appointed task.
Under the authority assigned to us by law, and on behalf of the Doctorate Board, I grant you, Robert Ereola Shiyanbola, the degree of doctor, and all the rights that are attached to this degree. As evidence of this, I'm going to present to you this diploma, signed by the Rector Magnificus, the Secretary of the Graduation Committee, and your promoters, and validated with the seal of the university.
Dear learned Dr. Shiyanbola, let me congratulate you also on behalf of the university on your acquired dignity. From now on, you have the right to use the title of doctor. This title implies that society can rely on the quality of your judgment, that you will act with integrity and transparency, and that you will communicate independently about the results and societal relevance of your work. Value the doctoralis as an honorable distinction and a well-deserved prerogative, but always remember the obligation imposed by it towards the scientific community and society. May I invite Professor Zevenbergen to hold his laudatio.
Dear Dr. Shiyanbola, dearest Robert, it is my privilege to congratulate you on this joyous occasion of completing your PhD, also on behalf of your daily supervisor, Dr. Todorevsky, who has to be online today. We also like to include your wife, Oluwabokula Shiyanbola, unfortunately also only online today with us, and the rest of the family. I understand there's a cousin and nephew present here as well today. The first time we met in person was during a walking meeting in the Volkspark in May 2021. It was in the middle of the third corona wave, and a meeting in the office was not allowed. So we actually decided to meet by walking through the park. And you didn't like non-face-to-face meetings. You're really a fan of meeting face-to-face and never became a fan of online meetings. Our meeting schedule remained a bit erratic over the years, with long periods without meetings, also chance meetings. About a year ago, we even caught up in the Utrecht Cathedral after the ordainment of a priest. And in May, we even ended up meeting online on a Sunday to get this date fixed. As often with PhD candidates like you, you arrived with a clear idea of what the overall topic of your work was going to be. Framing it in a scientific way and going through all the scientific steps was something you learned along the way. Developing an academic writing style was also quite a challenge in the beginning and not always a nice process. Several times journals declared paper out of scope or even rejecting. But your fieldwork did bring a wealth of information, especially in the form of narratives, which you could build on for the thesis. At some point, we were even getting a bit worried when, in a period of the second review of your third paper, Somebody commented, one of the reviewers commented, there was not enough new results, but you surprised us positively by bringing a big printed set of new collected data to the meeting that your research assistant had collected. You ended up with a clear framework for land conflict management. However, if it will go beyond the concept that you've developed on paper and will be really implementable in the practice, I think remains a bit of an open question. We also saw several of the opponents ask about this. Because your design seems to believe in the base goodness of all people. And although you also highlight in earlier parts of the thesis the challenges with scarcity and greed. So yeah, that's kind of a mix, a balance. How do we find a balance? By people being really honest, needing to be honest, as you also said in one of the answers, and the fact that often there is greed involved. If we want to describe you as a person, I think perseverance seems to be an appropriate term, and maybe it's even versatility. From the beginning, you only had funding for 3 years, and in the end you spent almost 4.5 years doing it. Fieldwork was not as long as you had originally planned. It's increased your time here in Enschede. The euro value of your scholarship dropped very quickly. Even in euros, things became much faster, expensive than anticipated. A little additional financial support came through your membership of the Faculty Council in 2024, and also the last months the ITC Foundation gave some help. At some moment, you even told us that you had sold some land to use the money to continue your stay here in Enschede. I hope it was done in such a way that this sale will not lead to a land conflict. Or maybe we should be happy if it leads to a land conflict, because then you could actually validate your framework in solving it. I know your time in Enschede has been challenging at a lot of the time. I'd also like to thank those in your network, both at home, many online right now, and also those here in Enschede, some of are in the room, for helping you through these harder periods as well. At Obafemi Awolowo University back home, they are expecting you within the week, but I hope that this evening and the coming days you have some time to celebrate and relax. Once again, congratulations and take care.
Thank you, Professor Zevenbergen, for this very nice laudatio. Let me also congratulate you on behalf of the university and the entire committee. The committee, I can report, was very happy to see that you're answering very honestly. So also, if you don't know something, you just say that you don't know. I think that's a very good way to discuss. Professor Zevenbergen already mentioned the challenge that you had to fix the date for the defense, but you could just be here in this week. So this, and we managed also to get then the committee convened in this week. So that was a very well organized. In our pre-meeting, you mentioned that you indeed want to also implement now your developed framework in Oyo County, Oyo State. So I wish you all the best with your future work there in your state. And I hope that you really manage to get it implemented there, and maybe also beyond your state to the larger parts of Nigeria. So I wish you all the best for your further career. And with this, I'll come to the end of this, almost come to the end of the session. I'll ask you and your paronyms to take up your seats in the audience, please, again. Oh, yeah. I have a very valuable promoter next to me. I forgot to give you this book. It is a special version of your thesis, because it has been signed by the members of the committee as a memory also for this meeting. So, please. Thank you. Then I have a little bit of information on the way we file out. We will again be led by the beadle, but then now we will be followed. He will be followed by the young doctor, the paronyms, and family friends from the first row. Then by the graduation committee, other relatives, and everyone else. After I close this meeting, the candidate will have a short moment to interact with the online committee members before we really file out completely. I close this public meeting of the Doctorate Board of the University of Twente.
I want to use this moment to thank Professor Chigbu, Dr. Weber, and Dr. Ploa, and of course, my daily supervisor, Dr. Dimotrovsky, for your support and for your questions, those interesting questions, and for making these days possible, and for sharing this moment with me. Thank you so much. And of course, I thank a committee that are here physically and all of you who are here. Thank you.